us. Good to have you, Scott.
Good to be here.
And Stephanie Lewicki from the Futures and Forex team at TD Ameritrade, and Michael McCurr, strategist on the institutional and trading education side here at TD. All right, Scott, you want to get us to start MGM, MLB?
Let's do it.
Baseball, sports gambling, it's officially, you know, it's a thing that's going on now here.
And how about the NBA now also, what
Yep.
just came out. And I actually think they're behind the times a little bit. And this is something, though, that their audience wants. And this is something that is only going to help propel viewership, interest, and quite frankly, the bottom line of MLB and NBA. If you think about in-game gaming, so not bets that are placed prior to the game happening, but actually,
like, is this next, you know, hit a home run or something?
Yeah, live betting. That is actually going on right now, and it's going on sports sites like Bovada. It's going on in the UK, and it hasn't happened here. And about 40% of all wagers that are made in the UK are actually made during the game, as opposed to prior. So I think this is a huge step for not just the gaming commission, not the gaming sector, but also for MLB, also for the NBA.
Right.
And I think it's just going to increase viewership. I think it's a great move.
Yeah, Stephanie?
You know, these two guys are the sports gamblers, I think, and might have a little bit more like inside knowledge on this. But what I take away from out of this, I think for MGM, it's really they're getting the rights to MLB's exclusive stats into their intellectual property.
Data.
Data, yes. So I think everything, you know, with all these companies, you know, the FANG names when we talk about it, Facebook, Google, it's all about really the data you can collect. So this is, again, them having the exclusive data and really kind of having that statistical edge, MGM, over some of the other casino stocks, gambling stocks, companies that are in the same business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. There's a lot of interesting things that both sides kind of get out of this. Like Scott said, they're a little bit late to the party since May, when that Supreme Court did strike down the decision, kind of opened the door to legalize gambling in the United States.
Sure. Well, hold on, let me jump in on that real quick though, Mike, because I thought this too when Scott mentioned it as well. Obviously, I'm sure that there was a whole competition to basically get these rights, right? So should we not be impressed that MGM came away with this? I mean, I'm sure there are a bunch of other casinos and a lot of other companies that wanted this.
Yeah, I do think it's impressive, but I think it's more impressive that the MLB has almost changed the way that Major League Baseball looks at gambling itself. For 100 years, gambling has been taboo. You look at Shoeless Joe Jackson, Pete Rose, and now all of a sudden they start to introduce the idea of, okay, we're going to be warmer to the idea of gambling around our sport and everything like that. So they obviously want the data that MGM has and vice versa. Baseball is really a game about pace of play. It's a very slow sport. Their attendance has been crippled over the past 5 years.
So they need something to...
They do. They need a little bit of a rejuvenation of the sport, and I think this is something that's going to do that.
All right, so we got the ESPN analysis in there. I like it because that's definitely not going to come from me. So thank you, Mike. Mike, other question here is you look at the stock. MGM's down 1.7%. I like the point about how baseball, the sport, might need it, right? MGM, the rest of the casinos, they kind of need something too. And so far, the regional casinos, they've also now ebbed too, but companies like Penn Gaming, Churchill Downs, which owns the races and slots, and they have been able to kind of break away, Scott, and be a little bit better in 2018 than some of the big legacy Vegas Strip giants. Is this a first step to kind of reasserting themselves?
So I think you have two things going on. These big legacy casino giants, they've really been hurt this year by Macau, by their international business, as opposed to just gaming right here or sports gambling right here. So is this new news? Is this going to make up for what's happening in Macau and what's happening internationally? No.
A smaller part for MGM, but still like 15%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is a step in the right direction, in my opinion, to engage their users. It's not unlike other sectors that we're seeing, just trying to engage users on a mobile app, on not just a daily basis, but a minute-by-minute basis. I love it.
Yeah. Stephanie, when you look at all of these, right, we've got basically 4 different types of companies on that chart. Las Vegas and Wynn are the ones with that big, heavy Macau exposure, but yet all the stocks basically have ended up in the same place. Some of the regional ones that had a little bit of a different chart in the early part of the year, but they've all kind of gone to the same place. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. You know, I think they're down around 20% year to date, and it makes sense if people aren't just their discretionary type, I don't know if you call that discretionary spending, they're just not gambling as much. And now I know there's more to some of these, you know, there's hotel stays and all kinds of other stuff that these companies provide. But I think it's another thing is these companies are trying to expand their business or enhance their business. Another way to do that, as I just kind of related back to Ford, because we've talked about Ford a lot, and how they're getting into the scooter business, and then they're getting into some technology stuff. Like these companies have to kind of grow and expand to stay alive in this such, you know, tech-heavy entrepreneurial market.
Yeah, even giants have to keep growing, basically.
Right, and to follow up with what Stephanie started out by saying is that the sector has been absolutely demolished this year. It's down 25% year to date. It's directly the correlation between how much the stock is down and is directly related to the Chinese exposure and how much business is in Macau. So when over 40% of their revenue...
MGM's down the same amount.
Well, that's because they...
Macau.
Well, let's look at the numbers specifically, because Wynn is down about 30+% this year, and they have 40% of their revenues coming from Macau. MGM, on the other hand, is down about 18% this year, and only about 20% of their revenues come from there. So they're definitely a little bit more insulated. Churchill Downs is up on the year, and they have less exposure to Macau. So everything really hinges on China moving into the end of the year, moving into 2019. Do we get a positive framework from Xi and Trump over the weekend? If we do, that gaming sector could see some relief.
Do you think the relief that we've seen so far might be an expectation? Is it a coincidence this is coming ahead of G20, that Wynn finally gets a little bit of a bid?
A little bit. I think it's a dead cat bounce if you look at it on the chart itself. I mean, it's still down 30%. So sure, it's rallied about 15% off the low for Wynn and some of the other ones, but we really need some positive framework.
Yeah. Last thought, Scott Bauer?
You know, Adam Silver, the new commissioner, I shouldn't say new, he's been in place now for 5-6 years. Adam Silver has been a huge... NBA, huge proponent. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
That's pretty good.
I dabble.
Huge proponent of legalizing sports gambling, whereas David Stern, the old regime, as you guys were talking about, was totally against it. So he has really, really pushed for this, enabled it, especially in New Jersey. I think this is just the start of things to come. Do I think this can make up for the shortfall coming out of China? No. Step in the right direction, though, for user engagement.
All right. Great stuff, guys. Really good conversation across the board. We still got to talk Powell, though. 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 in New York. We'll be right back. One more look ahead of the speech.